Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the RUSD Board of Education meeting. If you would like to view this meeting on our Spanish live stream, please follow the link provided on the agenda, which can be found at our website, www.riversideunified.org. We are also broadcasting closed captions today, so those watching the meeting live stream can follow the live transcription of the closed captioning through the link in YouTube. This meeting will be held online and there will be no physical meeting location open to the public. The board encourages members of the public to join the meeting electronically, and you can find information on the board meeting agenda regarding how to submit your public comments. I would like to introduce Assistant Superintendent Sergio San Martin to provide this message in Spanish.
Thank you, Madam President Alavi. Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la reunión de la Junta de Educación del Distrito Escolar. Si gustan ver esta reunión en español, sigan el enlace incluido dentro del orden del día, el cual pueden encontrar en nuestro sitio de línea en www.riversideunified.org. Hoy también estamos transmitiendo con subtítulos para quienes están viendo en la transmisión en vivo. Pueden seguir los subtítulos en vivo por medio del enlace en YouTube. Esta reunión se llevará a cabo solo en transmisión en línea y no habrá un lugar físico de reunión abierto al público. Le recomendamos a los miembros del público que se unan a la reunión electrónicamente. También, en el orden del día de la reunión, se puede encontrar información sobre cómo presentar sus comentarios públicos. Muchas gracias. Back to you, Ms. Alavi. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'm going to establish the quorum. Mr. Hunt?
Here, Mrs. Alavi.
Thank you. Mr. Lee? You have to unmute, Mr. Lee.
Sorry about that. Here.
Thank you. Dr. Farouk?
Here.
Ms. Lock-Dawson?
Here.
Ms. Orozco?
Here.
Very good. We're all here. And now please follow me with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is a momentous calendar day, September 15th, 2020. It was 150 years ago that the city of Riverside was founded. Steve Leck, our Riverside County historian, had this quote from John W. North, our founding father, about what he envisioned for Riverside. Quote, "I have often thought how pleasant it would be to live in a society wholly made up of educated, enterprising, progressive people, where every neighbor is a companion and a friend, where each will vie with each other in building the schoolhouse, the church, the lyceum, the library, and the reading room, and where the views of all would harmonize in an onward march towards all that is pure, beautiful, and good." You can see that education and the schoolhouse figured centrally in John W. North's vision. Therefore, it isn't too surprising that the first school class was established in 1871, 1 year later, by Mrs. Rogers in her home on the corner of Mulberry and University up by Mount Rubidoux. Later that same year, our first schoolroom was built on 6th Street and Lime and was called Lincoln School. In the 1880s, Riverside passed a school bond to build a new, larger school, exactly as we still do today with our most recent Measure O bond. And they built what would become Grant School on the corner of 14th Street and Brockton in 1889. That school would house all grades until our first high school would be built a bit later. Riverside's history and Riverside Unified School District's history are interwoven because education was paramount to our founding fathers. It has always been that way in Riverside. It is a pride that many of us have felt about our community. Education has been a cornerstone for us, and I hope that it will continue to be so in the many years to come. Also, I would like to mention that today is the first day of Hispanic Heritage Month, and this runs from September 15th through October 15th. And Dr. Perez will be talking about that a bit more during her presentation. And now we have a presentation to the board. Ms. Hill. I don't hear Ms. Hill.
I'm sorry, I hit my mute and it didn't unmute. I apologize. Thank you, Mrs. Allaby. The Riverside Unified School District Board of Education has appointed 3 student members to its ranks for the 2020-2021 school year. Students from high school across the district had the opportunity to apply, and 3 representatives were chosen from the population of rising seniors at Riverside Polytechnic High School, Ramona High School, and Riverside STEM Academy. 2 of the board members, the 2 from Riverside Polytechnic High School and Ramona High School, were not able to be sworn in at the last board meeting, so they will be given the oath of office during this board meeting. Rhea Mystery from Riverside Polytechnic High School will serve during term 2, which takes place December through February. And Micah Daly White from Ramona High School will serve during term 3, which takes place March through May. Each board member will be seated with members of the Board of Education and will be recognized as a full board member. Their preferential votes are cast, but do not affect the final outcome. The Board of Education President, Mrs. Kathy Allaby, will administer the oath of office to the students.
Thank you. I'm going to begin with Rhea. And Rhea, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please repeat after me? I, Rhea Mystery,
I, Rhea Mystery,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution
that I will support and defend the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
and I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations, Rhea. We are
Thank you.
as a board member. Ms. Hill, yeah, yay. Clap.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Allaby. In order to enhance communication between the Board of Education and the student body, and in an effort to engage students in the district's educational programs and operations, the Board of Education encourages the involvement of high school students in district governance. Each year, eligible students go through a selection process, which includes submission of an application, a letter of reference, and a face-to-face interview with 2 RUSD board members. After this process takes place, the board members appoint 3 students to serve the full year and each will take a term to be seated with the board for participation during board members. The student board members will attend board meetings and they are seated with elected members. They will be expected to share peers' voices and provide informal input or notes on agenda topics. Student board members cast their preferential votes, which do not affect the numerical outcome. They may also make motions that can be acted upon by the board. Mrs. Allaby, at this time, I'd like to introduce Micah Daly White.
You want to, I don't think we read Rhea's,
That was kind of out of order, so I can read hers.
why don't you read Rhea's bio and then we'll go to Micah.
Okay, I will do that. I'd like to introduce Rhea Mystery, who was just sworn in. She is Riverside Polytechnical High School, class of 2021. She will serve during term 2, December through February. Rhea is the president of the Special Needs Integration Club, Bear Pals, at Poly High. She was born in Riverside. She attended Castleview Elementary School, Gage Middle School, and is currently a senior at Riverside Polytechnical High School. Rhea has a long academic history and is ranked at the top of her class at Poly High. She is a member of the National Honor Society and is involved in Link Crew and Avid. In addition to her academic accomplishments, Rhea is a tennis and track athlete and has been recognized by organizations such as Riverside's 25 Most Remarkable Teens and the Future Leader Scholarship. Outside of the academic environment, Rhea is the founder and president of Bundles of Care, a 501c3 nonprofit organization which serves to provide foster children and low-income families with school and hygiene essentials bundled in a backpack. Rhea plans to attend USC to study communicative sciences and disorders, childhood special education, and gender and sexuality. She hopes to combine these interests to help others and become a psychiatrist specializing in the treatment of special needs patients.
Thank you. Congratulations again, Rhea. Okay, go on to Micah.
Next, I would like to introduce to you Mr. Micah Daly White, Ramona High School class of 2021, who will serve term 3 and which is March through May. Micah is the vice president of the Black Student Union and is also a 3-year member of the 100 Black Men Saturday Academy Inland Empire chapter. He has been a part of Riverside Unified School District since 2019, attending Ramona High School for his 11th and 12th grade years. Whether it's academic, extracurricular, or group activities, Micah prospers in every category. Last year, he obtained a 4.0 GPA as a result of completing 3 AP courses as well as 2 dual enrollment college courses. He is the 2020 second place winner of the Southern California Leadership Conference annual Building Dr. King's Beloved Community Oratorical Contest, and he received an academic scholarship. Micah's plans for this year as a member of RUSD Student Board include hearing the voices of students, staff, and parents district-wide. He is also looking forward to collaborating with the district school board as well as his fellow student board members. Micah would like to propose new guidelines, policies, and stratagem in order to make this unique method of schooling a more smooth and adequate transition for all. Micah plans to attend a 4-year university after high school, where he will major in historical studies. He desires to earn a bachelor's and a master's degree, as well as a teaching credential to become a high school history teacher. During his time of leisure, Micah enjoys producing music, drawing, reading articles, historical information, socializing with friends and family, and thinking creatively as an artist.
Thank you very much. Now, Micah, at this time, I would like to ask you to raise your right hand and repeat after me.
All right.
Okay. I, Micah Daly White,
I, Micah Daly White,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
discharge the duties in which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, Micah. We are so pleased to have you as a student board member.
Thank you so much. Proud to be one.
Thank you. We're all looking forward to getting to know all of our student board members better, and we thank you very much. Now, our two other student board members, Ria and Micah, do not have to stay on the meeting. This is not your term, but our current student board member, Vanessa Orozco, will stay on as this is her term. We will now open the queue for item E1, which is public input. This item is for members of the public to comment on topics that are not already on the agenda. Mrs. Reno Frosto will now provide the instructions for entering the queue.
Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. If you are a member of the public who has joined the Zoom call today to provide public input for topics that are not already on the agenda, you may now enter the queue by using the raise hand function if you are logged in using the computer, or *9 if you are using your phone to call in. Once again, the queue is open for public input, item E1 at this time for items that are not already on the agenda. All other members of the public wishing to speak on an item that is on the agenda will be invited to enter the queue prior to the item beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll move on to item C, which is our district superintendent's comments. Dr. Hanson.
Thank you, President Alavi. Good evening, members of the board and members of the public. And again, congratulations to our 3 student board members. I've had a chance to spend time with all of them, and I too am so excited to have them come and join us on the governance team. Congratulations. This evening, I have 3 different items that I'd like to update the board with, as well as the community. The first one, you heard Mrs. Alavi refer to it earlier, but it's the Hispanic Heritage Month. Today, September the 15th, marks the beginning of National Hispanic Heritage Month. It runs through October the 15th and celebrates and recognizes the contributions Hispanic Americans have made to American society and culture. To celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, Dr. Carlos Cortez, internationally known scholar of race and ethnicity and longtime Riversider, will be joining us at our next board meeting, October the 6th, 2020. He will provide us with, I'm sure, a very inspirational and poignant words and message to express the urgency of inclusion of the voice of Latino community in all that we do, as well as all students. Our schools are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month in various ways, from exploring the richness of Latin America culture school-wide to lessons in the classroom. And additionally, as Assistant Superintendent Dr. Jacqueline Perez will share in her presentation this evening, we have included this, as well as other cultural celebrations, in a calendar for our staff to be utilized in creating an inclusive environment where our students, families, and employees can be seen and heard throughout our work in our schools and district year-long. The second item I'd like to talk about this evening, completely different topic, and it's out of an abundance of caution and in alignment with the Centers of Disease Control guidance and the Riverside Unified School District's field trip policy for the 2020-2021 school year. Elementary science camps for all schools will be suspended for the 2020-2021 school year. PALI and Pathfinder, those are 2 camps that RUSD schools attend, have canceled or postponed all services for this year and are refunding schools their deposits. Individual schools may certainly explore options for science enrichment to be held virtually or on-site with cabinet approval when health conditions permit us to come back on-site. The recommendation to not participate in field trips will be revisited for the 2020-2021 school year. And the third item I'd like to mention is a follow-up from our last board meeting. There was a couple of questions from board members about substitutes that we have, particularly in the classroom, and how we're training them. Well, I'd just like to share with you that as of September the 4th, approximately 475 certificated substitute teachers have participated in distance learning training. Now, of that 475, up to 80 of them, they're long-term certificate substitutes, have participated in the same training that mirrors the training that all of our teachers go through. And again, a long-term sub is in the classroom for an extended period of time because of that teacher's absence. Up to 400, the other number of short-term substitutes, have also participated in training provided to help them through the day-to-day substitute training necessary to step in and cover for a short period of time our teachers. And short-term substitutes, they have 3 modules that they need to train. So congratulations to all those substitutes that have come and joined RUSD. Gratitude to the Human Resource Department who has provided this training. And we're grateful that they're here to help us through this difficult time. That concludes my comments for this evening, Ms. Alavi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hanson. And now we'll move on to board members' comments. And tonight we're going to begin with our student board member, Ms. Orozco. Do you have some comments for the board?
I do. Thank you so much, Mrs. Alabi. The first thing I would like to start with is my fellow student board members, Micah, Rhea, and I are very excited to be working closely with Assistant Superintendent Dr. Paris as participants of the Equity Task Force. We look forward to participating in the new listening circles that have been instituted to help and educate ourselves about others' perspectives. And I also have another topic I would quickly like to go over. Mental health and sexual harassment have been prevalent in today's youth. We have recently seen concerns on social media amongst an RUSD school that affected many students. Students have been involved with creating a movement and have requested justice. The student board members, along with other students in our district, are requesting to have assistance in the enforcement of more strict protocols toward sexual harassment and the involvement of authorities when needed and when appropriate, in the hopes that if anyone reports an issue of being harassed, immediate action should be taken. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Orozco. That's just the perfect kind of comment that the board needs to hear. Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mrs. Alvey. I appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Nice to see everybody. Looking forward to this meeting this evening. Not much in the way of comments, but just excited to kick off Hispanic Heritage Month with this meeting, and the various items that we're going to discuss as a board tonight I think is very appropriate. I'm also very excited and encouraged for our next meeting to hear from Dr. Cortez sharing a little bit about Hispanic Heritage Month. So thank you, Mrs. Alabi, and Dr. Hanson for coordinating that for the next meeting. And thanks for everybody's work to put this agenda together today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Dr. Farouk.
Thank you, President Alavi. And I'm excited about the input and the voice of new student board members. I hope that we follow up on our board member Orozco's comments today as well. Those are very serious and important issues. I also just wanted to express, I appreciate President Alavi kicking off the meeting with that quote. I was going to mention that quote if you hadn't. And just to piggyback off of that, I hope that, we're very proud of our history of Riverside and John W. North being an abolitionist. And so I hope that there's an opportunity for students to have an awareness about the 150th anniversary, and from a historical and civic pride standpoint, I think the students should have that awareness. So I want to emphasize that. I also want to echo my colleague, Trustee Lee, about the Hispanic Heritage Month. And I appreciate Dr. Hanson mentioning about how we're incorporating this as an educational opportunity of culture and history and curriculum for our students. And I think, again, to echo those comments, that the couple of the agenda items today, one about the ethnic studies, which we obviously want to, Chicano studies is an important component of that, but also that our other proposed resolution for consideration, racism as a public health crisis, includes a component for us to expand our commitment to diversity in our workforce, which is a very important part of among a multitude of other aspects of issues that we want to support in the diverse community and the important representation that Latino and Hispanic cultures provide in our community and our school district. Lastly, I just want to make a comment regarding our Measurable Oversight Committee. I'm a little concerned about some of these outstanding vacancies, especially ones that have requirements such as the taxpayer association representation. I hope that we can fill those quickly and that we proceed with those meetings based on having those representations that are necessary. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Farouk. Mrs. Lock-Dawson?
Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. I don't have too much to say tonight. I'm looking forward to the reports that we have tonight. I feel like it's been a long time coming. I want to thank Ms. Orozco for those comments because it's good to hear from our youth about challenging these types of things, because I think as women of a certain age, sometimes we've grown up with stuff and lived through it. So it's always nice, I think, to hear younger women speak up about their concerns. So thank you for bringing that up. And just want to thank everybody, thank staff for working so hard, and appreciate everybody's time. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. I appreciate that. First, Mrs. President Alavi and board members, for the second time, I'm going to turn down for the second time in my 13 years, I'm going to have to step out of this meeting. The first one I missed years ago, 3 years ago, because of sudden death and a family member. But I have a business obligation tonight to attend by Zoom a public hearing for my clients in San Bernardino County in the city of Fontana that requires my attendance to make the presentation. I will step out of this meeting at 5:45 to begin that. I hope to be back by 7. But that said, I want to thank the board and President Alavi for their accommodation made to me to start this meeting a half hour earlier, so that to the best of our ability and timing, that I can be present for the two very important and even historical items that are on our agenda tonight. So I do appreciate that. To our student board members, and Mrs. Alavi and I represented the board interviewing them, every one of those young people were, not just the ones we chose, but otherwise were outstanding. And I was very moved, and I recommend to the community that if you go on our website, you'll see their names and pictures, and each one of them gave a short presentation, as a board member should, about their commitment to their role. And each one was just outstanding. I would ask you to take your precious time and not more than 10 minutes to watch and listen to what they said. The reward you'll receive for that expenditure of time will be, I think, a renewed belief and inspiration in the youth of America, and particularly the youth of RUSD. Micah, like your colleagues, you talked about including all students, and I thank you for that, but also I was just so impressed and moved by your comments that went beyond such that it's the community that is enriched by the district, and you want to know more about that. You really did move into what John F. Kennedy said, that no society can move more swifter than the movement and upward enhancement of their education system. So I appreciate that. I want to commend the staff on an excellent report given to the board in their mail out on our current RUSD bilingual staff, and some of the very impressive 131 in teaching, et cetera, and interpretation, 73 teachers, and Spanish language support of classifieds, 45 fine people. So I'm proud of that, and I like your ideas. I'm looking forward to hearing them at a future board meeting about including bilingual preferred in our advertising of positions. I appreciate and thank you, Dr. Hanson, about reminding us of Spanish Heritage Month and the upcoming speaker. Certainly our community, always been a diverse community, is rewarded for this. This is also Suicide Prevention Month here in America. And our district has for many years put a priority on working with our young people challenged, and with the social and emotional counselors. And I would say that in their health, the young people's health, our students. And I would remind us that is our Our mission and obligation is health. And, but I think it's also, and I would ask the citizens, and it is also a community-wide dedication to that as well. And so I thank you for that. I do want to say to Dr. Farouk's comments that I too hold a concern about the Measure O Oversight Committee, a meeting held last week without the representation of a bona fide taxpayer association rep. And I am concerned about that. That is could be in violation of the statute. Oversight committee is to be independent. I am, fellow board members, concerned that the 3 members that rolled off were given a thank you letter, but as our bylaws talk about, and 2 of them wrote us that they wanted to be, wrote Mr. Kakish and Assistant Superintendent Sergio St. Martin, that they wanted to be re-added. Nothing's been sent to them yet. I talked to both of them this afternoon, and we can do better than that. This committee is to be independent, and it is to be reportable to the board, not to staff, to the board. It is our responsibility to the citizens who have of the RUSD nation that have, by what was I think 70% committed to our bonds. So it's an important committee. It's important to the board and each of our obligations, along with Dr. Hanson, to be transparent in everything we do, and to we promised them that we would have strong oversight of the bond, and I want to see more of that, and I look forward to working. Dr. Hanson, I would like it sit back to the operations committee, which, as you know, is Mrs. Alavi and myself, and that we can look at these and understand better the process. But I do want, please, again, we've asked Mrs. Alavi, following the last meeting we had here, asked that letters be sent about the request for reappointment. There's nothing in the bylaws that say, as Mr. San Martin told me they were going to ask for, filling out a new application. These citizens have given their time for 2 years. We ought to know them by now. And it's just a reappointment. Nor do I agree with Mr. San Martin's admission that they were going to ask these people to sign a declaration that they would support the bylaws of the board. That is, they're to be independent. The bylaws of the board are to be guide the board. So I know it's a tough time. We're doing it the right way. I think better than B, and we just need to improve on it. It is the obligation that each one of us, along with Dr. Hanson, the governance team, have to our taxpayers. Thank you very much, Mrs. Alavi, and thank you to staff again.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. I just have a short comment. When we are sitting at the RUSD table, the needs and wants of the classified employees are ably represented by their association, which is the CSEA. And teachers and certificated employees are capably represented by their association, which is the RCTA. Even administrators, should they need it, have a voice in RASM, which is the Riverside Association of School Managers. But who speaks on behalf of the families, the students, and the parents? Well, those representatives are before you now. The Board of Trustees, the 5 elected, and the 1 student board member, whose role it is to provide citizen oversight of the district and to provide advocacy. Without us, parents and students would not have a voice at the table. Therefore, I speak on behalf of a good many of those families when I say that online education is a mixed bag at best. I don't think this is earth-shattering news for anybody, but despite our doing everything possible, Riverside families are having a very tough time of things. First of all, children, there are many families where children are too young to learn online without intensive parent support, which isn't there in some cases because of work or family situations. Many students have been disengaged, and parents who are frustrated because they have nowhere to go to help. Families who can't navigate the technology, or it is just erratic or unstable for them. Students whose mental and emotional state are precarious. Language issues, which are intensified with this online format, and in spite of, and I might add, I believe, truly heroic efforts by teachers. A difficult medium, which is made more difficult for our neediest children. And you might ask how I know this. It is because I hear and talk to parents and families in my advocacy role, as does the entire Board of Education. After the last meeting, I received an email suggesting I shouldn't be encouraging the district to return to the classroom because it is dangerous for teachers. I would like to address my position on that. When our country and our county has arrived at the level of contagion which is deemed safe for the next stage of reopening, then and only then do we need to be taking every step we can to offer students every opportunity to begin learning in person. Right now, LA Unified is beginning small classes reopened for special education and English language learners in small, safely monitored classrooms. I think that is a necessary step for these children who are not learning virtually. And I believe it can be made safer, much safer than Costco or Home Depot, as I alluded to at the last meeting. Unlike hundreds of people crammed into a store without safety protocols, we will have clear protocols with temperature checks, social distancing, hand washing stations, and the wearing of safety gear. Clearly, we will listen to health experts who will give us advice on how this is best done. So I do stand behind families who are suffering and students who are not learning and frustrated. And for that matter, teachers who have been asked to do the impossible, that as soon as it is safe to do so, we take measures, much like we did at our last meeting when we moved to phase 2 of sports conditioning for our athletes to reopen our schools. While our community learning centers will help, and we do thank our kind community partners, they are basically spaced apart class settings in churches and community centers with adults monitoring them. Not much different than we could provide in our hybrid plan that we have outlined. For those few employees whose health is precarious and who are in fear of catching the virus, we've already made arrangements for you to teach virtually all year long. For everyone else, when it is deemed safe with precautions, I encourage us not to hesitate to move forward for the good of our students. And I hope that that can clarify that. I will now move on to public input. Ms. Reno Frosta?
Yes, Mrs. Alavi. Our first speaker this evening for public input is Mr. Keith Nelson. Mr. Nelson, you may go ahead and unmute. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say it was real exciting to hear your student board members. That is not my original topic, but to hear people that are so socially aware, especially Bear Pals and the Inclusion Committee, which is something I strongly believe in. That's encouraging, and I think a step forward for the board. A couple of the board members addressed my concerns. I'd sent an email earlier, but after our last Measure O meeting and some public input I've been hearing, I feel obligated to bring this up in public comment. Again, I want to make it clear, these are my opinions, mine alone, not the Measure O Oversight Committee, not any members, employees, staff, or any other community member. Anyone else of the committee is free to make their own comments. A few weeks ago at a Measure O Oversight meeting, Jason Hunter messaged me and says, I can't get into the meeting. I said, well, here's the link. I thought he missed it. I was surprised to find out he had termed out. This terming out policy had changed. When I termed out, I was just asked, do I want to rejoin? And it was rejoined. Another member we voted on as a committee. I know there have been questions about the bylaws and oversight, and we're working through that. But it's concerning that he seemed to be targeted, and that's the optics of it. Jason Hunter is an extremely smart individual, and I don't just say that because he's a fellow MIT grad. A couple weeks ago, we started to have a meeting, and we were out of conformity with the Brown Act. And it took Jason Hunter to point that out to help us from a violation. We have 2 attorneys on our board. We have staff. We have myself, and I'm embarrassed to say, who has been on boards and commissions for 20 years. Yet it took Jason Hunter and his unique insight to find that out. To my exact point, I think Jason's vital to our oversight. I was on the ethics board during every one of his complaints and voted against every one of his complaints. Yet we get along. He thinks I listen, and I listen to him, and we respect each other. Having sat as a visible board person on the other side of the dais as chair of the regional center during the terrorist attack while on probation from the state, with extremely low ratings. I always thought it was very important for us to have opposing opinions on our boards and commissions, people that think different, people that look deeply at our oversight and our numbers. Jason is uniquely qualified to go over complex financial issues, and I think he prevents the board from having a ton of people at your board meetings. I strongly feel due to state finances, you're going to have another board, and having great oversight is paramount to that. Thank you for listening, and thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Jerry Green. Mr. Jerry Green, you may go ahead and unmute, and you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Jerry L. Green, Black Student Advocate, and our phone number is 833-925-1957. We are a media company that advocates for Black employees and Black families with children in school. We assist families with getting services they need by holding school districts accountable. Our advocates work hard to meet the unique needs of every Black employee, Black family for fair and just treatment in the educational system. I'm going to address a couple of things that Dr. Farouk already brought it up. As the board is looking to address racism as a public health crisis, but with some prior cases, the district is defending their action against both a student who was discriminated against and also an employee. So the Black male employee, even though after the investigations, there was no findings, and he still was demoted. And his accuser was promoted and moved to another school. So for you to put out a letter on May 30th to talk about racism, and then also to label it or vote on it as a public health crisis, but then for you to continue to defend your position and your discriminatory and racist practices is disingenuous. So you can't have both. You can't have where you want to say, yeah, we're on a bandwagon to say, yes, it is a public health crisis, but defend your actions. So for you to do both, again, it makes the board, it makes the leadership, it makes the district look real silly. So at some point, you got to pick one or the other. You can't straddle the fence and say, yeah, we're for equal rights, but then you still punish and discriminate against the students and the staff. Again, my name is Jerry L. Green, Black Student Advocate. Our phone number is 833-925-1957.
Thank you. Our next speaker is joining us by phone. Sorry about that. The phone number ending in 3763. You're unmuted. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, board. My name is Amy Ayer, and I am a 4th grade teacher at Washington Elementary School. My 3 children also attend Washington in the dual language program. My public comment today is regarding the purchase of GoGuardian. In prior years, individual sites have chosen to purchase this program to monitor student use on district-provided Chromebooks. And while in person and at school, teachers had the ability to watch their students' Chrome windows while they were using their Chromebooks to provide support and keep students on task. During distance learning, this program has been an invaluable resource for teachers. Personally, I've been able to communicate directly with students using the GoGuardian chat. This has helped me assist students who I can see are struggling on independent work by providing instantaneous feedback, just as I would in the classroom while monitoring a student's work at their desk. Additionally, I've been able to reach out to students who have missed live instruction to provide directions and support that they were not able to receive that day. Finally, I've been able to monitor and support my neediest learners, my special ed students, and my English learners during independent work time, which is their most difficult part of the day. Outside of Google Meets, GoGuardian has offered me the closest environment to an actual in-person model. Unfortunately, the district has struggled to find a way to provide this critical resource for teachers this year, citing equity issues. I'd like to remind you that there's a difference between equity and equality. So I urge the district and the board to hold a discussion about this vital program and to either find a way to fund its purchase for the district or allow sites to purchase GoGuardian. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker before we open the next queue is Keila Mazariogos. Sorry about that if I did not pronounce that right. You may go ahead and unmute and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, close. It's Kayla Masariegos.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As I said, my name is Kayla Masariegos, and I am the Associate Director for the Center Against Racism and Trauma, which is an initiative out of Sigma Beta Psi Youth and Family Services. One of our main goals in the Inland Empire is to educate and challenge people's view on racism. With this, we're in full support of Resolution 2021-40 of integrating ethnic study courses as a graduating requirement. As an anti-racist initiative, we believe that it's important to instill critical thinking skills so that students can think about their own history and further understand the struggles and the oppression and successes of this country. Ethnic studies provide a critical lens to examine and contextualize what is happening right now and why it's happening. With these classes, students will be able to have the confidence to ask questions about systematic oppression, racism, and why George Floyd's death created a global uproar. Ethnic studies will challenge students to do strong research and challenge their views on US history. When we say knowledge is power, we definitely believe that. The more knowledge that these students are able to gain, the more power they will have to create social change, whether inside or outside the classroom. With all said, we support the fight for knowledge and the approval of Resolution 2021-40. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our comments on this item. We will now clear the queue and reopen for the study session, item F1. If you are a member of the public who has joined the Zoom call today to provide comment on the agenda item F1, a report on the topics of equity, ethnic studies, and racism as a public health crisis, you may now enter the queue by using the raise hand function if you are logged in using the computer, or *9 if you are using your phone to call in. Once again, the queue is only open for item F1, a report on the topics of equity, ethnic studies, and racism as a public health crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, we're going to take a short 5-minute break to allow those members of the public to enter the queue for the discussion on that item, agenda item F1, the topic of equity, ethnic studies, and racism as a public health crisis. So if we could please come back in 5 minutes, which is just 4:55. Thank you very much. Someone's watching the clock for me. We will return. Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, I'm going to bring us back to the meeting, please. If everybody could join us, that would be great. And now we're going to start our study session. Our first item, F1, the Board of Education will be provided with a report on the topics of equity, ethnic studies, and racism as a public health crisis. And I will now ask Ms. Renee Hill, our Chief Academic Officer, to take it over.
Mrs. Alavi, we do have two public.
Let's hear those public comments first.
Okay, thank you. Actually, there's a couple. Sorry about that. Our first speaker is Rakayla Simpson. Rakayla, you may go ahead and unmute, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Rakayla Simpson. I'm a public policy and advocacy fellow with Blue Educational Foundation. And I'm here to urge you to make ethnic studies classes available for students to fulfill their high school graduation requirement. Because I know how great of an impact being taught your history can have on a student's life. In that same breath, not only being taught your history, but being taught your history by someone who looks like you, because I feel like I'm a walking testament of that in itself. I had the honor and the privilege of being a part of a program called Sankofa when I was in middle school. And for those of you who are not familiar with Sankofa, it's a research-based approach to teaching that integrates Black history, culture, and language into teaching and the learning processes in order to create connections that promote academic excellence within African-American students. And I remember that time so vividly and so perfectly because that was a time in my life and a moment of many firsts. It was the first time in a school setting where I was told that I could be something exceptional. It was the first time that I had teachers who looked like me. It was the first time in a school setting that I learned of all of the great contributions Black people and people of color have contributed to this country, let alone the world. It was the first time that I felt that what I was learning reflected who I was as a person. It was the first time that the idea of college translated from a dream to an attainable reality. And if anyone is familiar with Johns Hopkins University, they have research that shows that Black students who have just one Black teacher are 13% more likely to enroll in college than their peers, and students who have at least 2 Black teachers are 32% more likely to enroll in college. And so fast forward, 11 years, me being in a Sankofa program where I've had, at least 5 Black teachers who look like me and who are teaching my history. I'm now a proud graduate of Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, with a Bachelor's of Science in Health Science pre-med and a minor in Health Science. So I feel like I'm a testament of that statistic only because my history was taught to me in such a significant way that I knew that with conviction that I could not only, be more, but I could do more. And so I'm just here to urge you all to make ethnic studies a class that's available for students to fulfill their high school graduation requirement. But in that same breath, making sure that we are having teachers that are teaching those classes that are reflective of the history that is being taught to the students. And so I hope that we can make this a thing in Riverside. And I thank you for your time. And ethnic studies needs to be a class available to all students.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. Our next speaker is Daryl Jones. Mr. Jones, you may go ahead and unmute. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Darrell Jones, and I'm a college prep advisor for Blue Educational Foundation. In high schools, we hope to give students the knowledge and resources that they need before they step into this world as an adult. We have stressed the importance of reading, writing, and arithmetic, which are all necessary, but I believe we have missed an essential component, which is ethnic studies. I've had the opportunity to work with an amazing and diverse student body at John W. North High School, and I would attend BSU meetings and hear the concerns of students, many explaining how they felt they did not fit into a curriculum that they were expected to learn. We read passages in American history, but only find ourselves in 2 chapters, which gives very little context to how we fit into society today. I've learned that when you are able to take pride in who you are and learn more about who you are and where you come from, you begin to take pride in what you do, which is why 2016 Stanford studies showed that high school students who took an ethnic studies course led to an increase in GPA and overall student engagement. The benefit not only lies in their academic success, but also how great they will begin to do socially when engaging with peers and working in the most diverse state in the nation, which is beautiful California. I find it very fitting that we are speaking on this item when a vision was set 150 years ago that every neighbor would work together as a companion and as a friend. Let's give these students the opportunity to learn more about their respective cultures while also understanding how their culture relates, respectfully differs, and connects with those around them. What better way to prepare students to begin life by making ethnic studies a high school graduation requirement? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Regina Stell. Ms. Stell, you are unmuted, or yes, you are unmuted. You can go ahead and talk. Sorry, go ahead and unmute. There we go.
Thank you. Let's give me 1 second to get to my document. Be patient, please. Okay. First of all, good afternoon, and I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak and give my little input. I'm Dr. Regina Patton Stell, and I serve as the branch president for the Riverside NAACP. And more recently, I've gotten very involved with a new collective group of Riverside residents called the Anti-Racist Riverside. And I want to speak to the ethnic study requirement first. First of all, I don't have to give the student spiel. I was there and I recognize the impact of ethnic studies having been a recipient of that. But now, in light of where we are today, I don't think it's a question. I think it's a must that we are responsible to educate our youth to be prepared for tomorrow. So opening that up, making it mandatory, and I think we should start early, even though we're maybe a year or two before we actually get it running, start working on the competencies and the cultural, get input from the community to make that rich and make it real in our high school requirements. Secondly, I wanted to share that Anti-Racist Riverside, which is new, is our way of saying, let's get a groundswell of candid conversations going in this community. I really want the board to get engaged in that. I want the schools to get engaged in that. We want the schools, both the group and the NAC branch. We're working very hard. We will be contacting you guys and encouraging. We have a youth large division that's very active with this pursuit, but this is the time we must seize the moment. And I am excited. I think we can put Riverside on the map, not just for the purpose, but for something that we need in this country. We can be leaders. I want to applaud you for putting it on your agenda tonight. And let's start early and get the job done. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Dale Kinnear. Mr. Kinnear, you may go ahead and unmute. You have 3 minutes.
Thanks, Regina. And Regina was my principal when I was a teacher in Riverside County. The board's approval of an ethnic diversity requirement will be commendable. As a former RUSD principal, I know firsthand diversity makes us smarter. A course in ethnic studies allows students to study the social justice struggles affecting various groups. Since racial attitudes are learned behaviors, the curriculum must also teach directly about racism. In addition to recommending your approval, I have 2 other comments. First, it's important to ask and to understand details to ensure positive implementation. For example, what are the staffing implications? Do we currently have trained and interested staff to teach the course, or do we need to hire for this? What staff will we no longer need because students are taking this ethnic diversity class and not another subject? What is the impact on a student's course requirements, schedule, and choices? For example, AVID is one of our most successful programs with regard to increasing the participation of underrepresented students at the university. AVID student schedules are completely full, as are schedules for students in other programs, AP, IB, band, to name a few. Will these students need a 7th period class period or summer school to complete this new requirement? What are the financial implications? To what extent do we need that 7th period class or summer school? What are our teacher training needs and the cost of new materials? Finally, please reconsider your timeline. If diversity is truly valued as a crucial district goal, requiring graduating seniors to successfully complete the course by June of 2028 undermines our sense of urgency. Although I recognize this resolution requires an adoption of materials at a much earlier date, does 8 years to add a graduation requirement seem unnecessarily slow for a value we hold as important? The wheels of change need to turn more quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. That concludes the public comments for this item.
Thank you very much. And now I will call on Ms. Renee Hill, our Chief Academic Officer.
Thank you, Mrs. Alvey. Tonight we have a presentation for you that combines information about equity matters throughout the district. We'll begin with Dr. Jackie Perez giving us an update on our community outreach and equity, and then proceed to ethnic studies. Next slide, please. So Dr. Jackie Perez will take the first 2 items, and then I'll be taking the second 2. Next slide, please. Dr. Perez, it's all you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Hill, and good evening, President Alavi, esteemed board members, and Dr. Hanson. Our RUSD equity definition that you see here guides our work, and we're in the process of crafting a rubric based on our tenets, the 4 boxes, to be published alongside our plan in January 2021. Our equity work is grounded in a research-based approach to systemic equity, that there is clarity in language, our goals and metrics. We lead with equity mindedness, and we are on that journey. We have established policies and practices. We work within a cycle of inquiry, so always questioning and recrafting and revisiting our plan, and that it is system-wide. So let's get started. Go ahead to the next slide. Where did we leave off since last spring? Since last board update on April 21st, we've been working towards the following: building our equity and community engagement plan that's going to be published in January, our equity-based policies. We have an equity board policy, policies on hate-motivated behavior, a policy to support LGBTQ+ and transgender students. We're building our equity professional development for all staff. We've also created an equity planning site for managers to develop goals, which I'll get into a little bit more depth in these next few slides. And as Mrs. Alavi and Dr. Hanson have both mentioned, we are publishing a working cultural acknowledgements calendar as a resource for school sites to celebrate and authentically acknowledge diversity across campuses. So I'll give a little bit more detail very soon. Go ahead to the next slide. So at our leadership symposium in June, Dr. Hanson re-energized our group of 200 managers with a fresh call to action. He called leaders to do 4 things: dismantle inequities for all students and staff around our policies, practices, and procedures, to reflect on our own mindset on race and privilege. And again, this is super important in such a large organization. And as leaders and burgeoning equity champions in our district, that we start with ourselves, that we listen to student, family, and employee voice, and then we act now. So in light of that, we assembled a collaborative planning model, which guides every manager in the development and execution of their own equity goal. And this equity goal is also part of their evaluation. So in 3 steps,
managers will accurately identify a problem in their current practice that creates inequities. This is the RAR, or Recognize, Interrupt, and Repair process. That is probably the most unique in terms of this three-step process, and we'll explain it on the next slide. The second portion is crafting a goal to tackle that problem. Oh, not yet, sorry. You can go back. And this is a goal that is SMART. So it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. And then step 3 is develop a collaborative goal execution strategy, which is called a RACI plan. And this RACI plan serves as a full-scale plan that delineates and delegates the actions necessary to accomplish the SMART goal. So we recognize that goals are not one size fit all, and they're unique to the school or department. And what this does is allow some autonomy of each school team and or department to address specifically identified inequities that they can wrap their arms around and address this school year. So go ahead to the next slide, thanks. So each part of the RAR protocol includes a set of guiding questions that help leaders hone in on their problem of practice with precision and clarity. This protocol requires leaders to collect the stories of the marginalized in order to clearly define the problem and its consequences. The protocol also asks for an ideal scenario to capture a world with no barriers and then generate solutions so as not only to eliminate inequitable practices, but also very authentically honor diversity on their campus. So we have been very intentional in supporting all of our leaders to do this work so that we can delve deeply into the policies and practices that may be causing a inequity at the site. Go ahead to the next slide. So what you see over the next 2 slides are sample goals that our managers are working through. This one in particular is from Mrs. Katie Grimble, principal at University Heights Middle School. And really her focus is on the adult actions and the school culture and climate to create, that are creating those conditions to eliminate disparities for our students with disabilities. So she and her team are really addressing the achievement gap and also tackling inclusion as a school site. Go ahead to the next slide. Principal Ortega at Jefferson Elementary is also focusing on these adult actions around culture and climate to create those conditions, things that they have control over, to eliminate disparities for English learners, newcomers, foster youth, and again, addressing inclusivity and addressing access and making those connections with students and families. So those are just a couple of examples that our managers are working through. Go ahead to the next slide. Additionally, as we scale back up, in January, when you created this division, the Equity, Access, and Community Engagement Division, we have been hard at work to systematically dismantle barriers. We're targeting various aspects to connect with the voices in our system and to transform practices. What you see here are really ways for us to eliminate the opportunity achievement gap for all students, create those inclusive learning and work environments for students, families, and employees, increase family and community engagement, and also lead through the LCAP. So the different components that you have, the equity steering team, which really poses our internal leadership team to transcend across the system. We have our equity task force, which is our community-based group that provides input and accountability to us. We have our community leaders convening, which we began in springtime of this school, the last school year before COVID hit. That provides the community voice and also to increase partnership with our city. We have our LCAP advisory, which provides strategic input. And like Ms. Orozco had shared, we are also starting the district student equity leader. which will be led by our student board members, by Ms. Orozco, Ms. Mistry, and Mr. Daly White. So very excited to do that work with them so that we can incorporate the voices of our upper elementary, middle school, and high school students around themes of race, diversity, and inclusion. Go ahead to the next slide. So as a reminder, we continue to look at our best practices to tackle the systemic equity. And so our 2023 Equity and Community Engagement Plan really is grounded in that work. So this is a 3-year plan, which we're going to be highlighting the work in progress that addresses our 4 different components. We're looking at publishing our goals and this work in January to provide sufficient time for our managers to really do the systemic and thoughtful work into their goals so that we can make those public as soon as possible. So I'll go ahead and tackle each one now. Thank you. So what you see here is our work around policies and systems. And so like I shared, we have our equity policies, which are really driving the governance portion and helping lead alongside our leaders and provides a guiding light for our schools. Our cultural acknowledgements calendar. So we are working to identify and go beyond the mere celebration of cultures on a superficial level. What we are doing as a first step is really embedding the value of diversity in cultures and attaching them to our school climate and actions. Nothing's more important than for students from diverse backgrounds to feel included and feel acknowledged. And so now is the time that we are doing that. So this is a work in progress, and we're continually adding resources along the way. I want to just give you a couple of examples. So schools are currently celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month by doing classroom lessons. They're even doing some staff highlighting of their contributions to also bring some inclusive practices, even as a staff. One of our former student board members, Michelle Boulos, is also contributing to suggested activities that we can utilize. So again, we're having a community perspective. Additionally, in tying back to our policies and systems, our high school theater programs are incorporating themes of social justice and inclusion. And our arts coordinator, Mrs. Guzzi, is also looking to how can we celebrate this through all of our VAPA experiences throughout the school year. What you see too is a sample goal. So as I shared, we're going to be having about 200 goals for our entire system from each of our managers. And what you see is Joe Nieto's and the early childhood unit really addressing policies and practices that have created barriers for our African American families. And so I wanted to highlight that he and his team are really addressing that from a policy perspective. Go ahead to the next slide. So a team has built some resources for school and department staff to go in depth into Shattering Inequities, which is a book that as managers that we have begun reading by Dr. Robin Avalar LaSalle. We also have a component around cultural proficiency module, and that is an internal professional learning module that is designed to assist staff to learning more about the importance of culturally relevant pedagogy that will be able to enhance the experience for students. We also have 3 partners, which I'll highlight in the next slide, that are continuing to do work alongside us as experts to really address our system-wide efforts. What you see here too is a sample goal from our business services department, who is working to systemically decrease barriers that employees have felt and increase access and openness to all employees to really value their voice and create a sense of inclusivity and value to the organization. So again, as you'll see, I wanted to highlight some of the goals that our teams are working on. Go ahead to the next slide. So what you see here are three of our key equity partners in this work. We have Epic Education, which is where the protocol came from, our RAR protocol, which is really grounded in research on how we begin to look internal and be able to address some of the inequities in our actions. So their work is really focused on a few things. So we have year 2 equity teams, and those are our focus on Ramona High School and Martin Luther King High School. And their focus is really around culture and climate. The rest of our high schools will be year 1 in terms of working with a facilitator and their equity teams. Their equity teams are comprised of staff and students who will be working together to uncover their inequity and execute a plan. We will also have a classroom experience or a way to develop our equity champions. We're looking at a focus with our PGS staff and our classified leaders and staff we can really wrap our arms around this work and professional learning. We will continue to have some targeted supports for principals as well as staff, which I'll explain in a moment. One of our next community partners is Clay Counseling Solutions. They were a partner, Dr. April Clay and her team began in person, this is prior to COVID, who began the work at Martin Luther King High School around facilitating synergy circles. So this component really addresses culture and climate on campuses and the connectedness between students at our site. So we will be focusing this work at all of our middle schools and high schools through virtual synergy sessions. And so those will be starting soon. We don't want to start those right out the gate so that our students and families could get used to distance learning, but we are ready to kick these into high gear into next month. And our last key partner is the Anti-Defamation League and implementing the No Place for Hate campaign. What this started was from the Martin Luther King High School cluster, and it's really focusing on creating that inclusive environment where every feels a part of the community, and really there is no place for hate at each of these campuses. So we have tons of kudos with a lot of the growth that Martin Luther King High School has made with Mr. West, and they have already been trained, that staff. And their equity team is beginning to plan student events, virtual, but student events to make sure that we can bring them together. Miller Middle School will begin training as well as Amelia Earhart very soon. And the other schools will come on board when they are ready. So let's go ahead to the next slide. What you see here is the first of 3 levels of professional learning that we will be providing to all of our staff. So managers, certificated, and classified. These are asynchronous modules, so these are going to be independently done. They are modules. What you see here are 9 titles. So each one is a 1-hour module of learning. I want to just pause here so that you can take a look at the titles of the courses. So they span from how to talk about race, rooting out implicit bias, the impact of microaggressions, really understanding race and ethnicity. This is our first level. So in our spectrum of 3 levels where you see that these are equity champion levels, this is the first chunk of modules that staff can begin their own journey on becoming equity champions in the RUSD. Go ahead to the next slide. So what you see here then is now once staff has completed the first 9, now they move on to this second level, and now they're growing as an equity champion. And what you see, those titles, now they are increasing in complexity, and they're going to build on that first series of modules. Go ahead to the next slide. And lastly, this third series, a third of the series of modules is really grounding us in how do we implement this work. So we're learning alongside, our schools are taking actions, but now we're really developing ourselves as champions and really wrapping our arms around what it means to be a champion at our school site. So over the course of this next year, and it will end up spilling into the summer and the fall of next year, really building out the capacity and professional learning for every single one of our staff. Go ahead to the next slide, please. The third part of our equity plan is around culture and climate. And really excited, and as our student board members mentioned, we will be implementing our student, family, and employee listening circles. This has been a discussion. We got trained at the end of last year with our equity task force. So our equity task force will play a large role in these and really engaging in the discussion across the system around race, diversity, and inclusion. Like I shared, the cultural acknowledgements calendar really is authentically going deeply and really getting into authentically celebrating our students and families' culture. What you see there too is the restorative practices module. So this was developed from input from a group of stakeholders across the district, counselors and sub-counselors and administrators and teachers, really building out this module that all of our staff, certificated, classified, will have access to, but it really provides a way to expand the learning around how to do restorative practices and how to have that mindset and really hold individuals accountable for words and being able to repair any harm that may have caused. Additionally, what you see there is a sample goal, and this is from our Family Resource Center. And the goal here is really tackling the inclusive practices and addressing the ways in which our system has opened up access for our families. So this way, we're trying to increase the engagement of our Guatemalan families and increase access to them, especially for those who do not speak Spanish or English, but speak Ganjobal. So what kind of adult behaviors can we modify to increase engagement with them? Go ahead to the next slide. So with this fourth arm, which I'm really excited that this is here because this is a testament to our partners around community engagement. So our partners here are really the ones that we've been working with for the last 3+ years with our equity task force and our city partners with our community leaders. And this is where we can wrap our arms around the issues around race, diversity, inclusion as a district and also in the communities that our students and families live in. This one, we have mentioned this before, but we're really proud of it, is RUSD is a part of the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence with their Community Engagement Initiative. So it was an application process that we are a part of, and it really is a group of other districts that we're now part of this cohort to really focus in our efforts and look at best practices across the state so that we can implement them here in Riverside. Additionally, we have a focus goal, and that is going to be University Heights and the Scrimbles team. What you see here too is community engagement alignment. In a district this large, we have touch points of community engagement across the system. And so we recognize that sometimes we're very siloed. So we now are convening on a very regular basis and joining arms around systematically collaborating and increasing services back out to our families so we can work in partnership with each other. And what you see here with this particular goal is coming from Castle View and Ms. Ferris and her team, is really identifying some of those connection points that they need to grow through so that they can increase access for our lower socioeconomic status families. So on the next slide, moving forward.
I'm sorry, Dr. Perez, it did it. These slides weren't moving for me. I apologize. It says I have a bad internet connection. Pardon me for interrupting. Thank you.
No problem. So lastly, and moving forward, we're really focused on this work in completing and executing our goals. Like I shared, one of the, I think, key components of our work here in RUSD is making it system-wide. So one of them is really leading, teaching, and working with an equity mindedness. So we're tackling that with increasing our professional learning opportunities and then tackling goals that are measurable and achievable and that we'll be able to track throughout the school year. Additionally, we'll be implementing equity audits alongside our principals in the coming months, so we can go into a deeper dive into the practices that were maybe causing some inequities at the school sites. We will be beginning our student, employee, and family listening circles. We're going to continue with our personnel department in diverse hiring practices and be more reflective in that way to make sure our hiring is reflective of our community here in Riverside. Another component is really in listening to our students is support for our administration in executing fair and comprehensive investigations at our school sites. We want to make sure that all of our students and families are heard and that we're able to do so in a very fair way. We are implementing the equity policies. So although our policies have been created now, it is the work of putting them into the system. And lastly, really getting deeper into our anti-racism efforts across the system and across the district and our schools by implementing our goals and actions. That is absolutely where we will see the difference. So I'd like to pause there and respond to any questions or comments at this time.
Ms. Perez, I believe that we are going to ask the board to withhold their comments at this time until we've had public comment on this particular issue. We had public comment on the ethnic studies, but I don't believe we had public comment on racism as a public health crisis. So I think we're going to need to have Ms. Reno Frosto open up the queue again for further public comment. If anyone would like to make a public comment about racism as a public health crisis, that resolution. And I'm sorry, we kind of put those together, and I think we need to make sure that the public has had a chance to speak to that. Ms. Frosto, do you want to do that?
Yes, for point of clarification, would you like me to ask for public comment on the item G1, the resolution for public health crisis?
Yes, because I don't think we should be discussing the resolution until we've had the public comment.
I will do that now. Okay. We will now open the queue for action item G1. If you are a member of the public who has joined the Zoom call today to provide comment on the agenda item G1, approval of resolution number 2020-21-37, racism as a public health crisis, you may now enter the queue by raising the hand function if you are logged in using the computer, or *9 if you are using your phone to call in. Once again, the queue is open only for item G1, approval of resolution number 2020-21-37, racism as a public health crisis.
Okay, and now I think what we'll do is we will hear from Ms. Hill, who will tell us more about ethnic studies. Then we will go back, hear public comment, and then the board can debate, okay? Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. Would you advance to, yes, the ethnic studies. Thank you so much. Tonight I have a presentation about ethnic studies, which provides an update on our actions since our July 21st meeting. Next slide, please. I'll provide you some background, talk about the process we've followed in the intervening time, and give you a timeline. Advance 2, you can skip that one. Thank you. Throughout the district, in our commitment to equity, we would like to have multicultural people perspectives represented in all throughout subjects and also have ethnic studies courses. Would you advance the slide, please? So you see the subjects areas there. And then in the area of history, social science is where the specific academic discipline of ethnic studies resides. Next slide, please. At our June 21st board meeting, I brought to you the column in the middle, which had been designed after student requests for the spring. And then the instruction team had proposed streamlining the course offerings, as you see on the right-hand side. Would you click the slide, please? And at that meeting, we decided to go back, not to the specific list, but back to the process for fall, where schools would specify their own courses based on student requests, teacher courses, and counselor scheduling. And the instruction team would convene a work group to bring together a collaborative plan. Next slide, please. So since July until now, these are the courses that are being offered throughout the district. Students at all the comprehensive high schools and students in the virtual and home-based programs are currently enrolled in our longstanding ethnic studies courses, African American studies and Chicano studies, and ethnic diversity. Since that July 21st meeting, a team of teachers, counselors, and district office staff have met 5 times. That team has drafted a working purpose statement and would like to incorporate an advisory group, as well as bring periodic updates to the community and establish teacher working groups who will carry out the work of modifying courses and doing materials adoptions. As we did our work, we realized we needed a definition of ethnic studies and chose to rely on the one used by UCR's department, that ethnic studies is the interdisciplinary social and historical study of how different populations have experienced, survived, and critically engaged the United States nation-building project. Working purpose statement, the team envisions that will articulate a vision for ethnic studies, which is addressed in large part by your resolution tonight. Make sure that the program is aligned with district existing programs, have courses at high school, as well as integration in other subjects, support the already scheduled materials adoption for this year and the corresponding professional learning, then determine process and timing for the work throughout elementary and middle school as well. When it comes specifically to planning the high school courses, the team wanted to communicate that they would like to consider having the courses meet the CSU UCA area as a history course rather than the G area as an elective course. They want to work on the implementation of the graduation requirement pending approval of the resolution tonight. As a caller mentioned earlier, there's a lot of considerations to make: what grade level to place it in, what impact it would have on staffing, what impact it might have on student enrollment, not enrollment, but student course taking. The team wants to consider a dual enrollment course and also would like to advocate the College Board for an advanced placement course in ethnic studies. This is a timeline that just includes just a few elements of actions that will take place, but just to give you an idea of some of the actions that the working groups, the advisory group, and the teacher teams will do. And that concludes our input on the ethnic studies efforts from July till now.
Thank you very much. Before I open this up for the board to discuss, I think we ought to take any public comment that was directed towards racism as a public health crisis.
Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. There are no comments specifically to item G1, so we will go ahead and open the queue for item G2, which is the approval of resolution number 2020-21-40, Ethnic Studies Programs in RUSD. So you may now enter the queue by using the raise hand function. If you are logged in using the computer or *9, or if you are using your phone to call in. Once again, the queue is open for item G2, approval of resolution number 2020-21-40, Ethnic Studies Programs in RUSD. Thank you.
Okay. I will now open this up, our study session, to board members, and I'll call on Mr. Hunt.
On which one, Mrs. Alavi, are we talking? Oh my God. This is on ethnic studies, and I apologize to everyone. I have about 10 minutes before I have to step out.
Our study was on both topics.
All right. Thank you for Dr. Perez. I have a lot of confidence, as we all do, in your work, and Dr. Hansen's on this, and Miss Chief Academic Officer Renee Hill. I hope Dr. Snell of the NAACP, which is the Inland Empire chapter, called in, and I'm confident, knowing all of you and Dr. Hansen and the feelings of the board, that we will include our community as we develop those. John F. Kennedy said the goal of education is the advancement of knowledge and the dissemination of truth. I'm going to speak to both of these in that way. But Mark Twain observed and labeled history as the fluid prejudice, and that's how history has been written. I'm a history buff, and one of my favorite books is How Washington Fleeced the Nation, because it really tells us what is going on. We're beginning to find that out about other presidents, Woodrow Wilson and stuff. So I think it is very important that we make these statements first on the resolution that racism has a health crisis. And I appreciate Mrs. Alavi, President Alavi, and Board Member Patricia Locke Dawson for their tireless work on this resolution for racism. And I thank you for that. I think it's well written, and I don't think I'll be able to be here to vote on it, but I would vote very positively. Going back to the ethnic studies, a couple of questions, and thank you for including in all of this LGBTQ plus, and I hope we expand it as well. On ethnic studies, while I commend former Poly Lincoln High School teacher, longtime teacher here at RUSD, now Assemblyman Jose Medina, on his legislation and his leadership. It's only for half a semester, and I think, and I know you'll be crafting this, but I would ask, and with acknowledgement of concerns expressed by callers and by, I know President Alavi has expressed this, how it will affect other electives such as art, band, sports, etc., debate. But I really feel that we need to do more than just, as I think Dr. Perez on the racial racism as a health matter has articulated well. We have to be sure that we, I think, include, particularly for Riverside, which is if there ever was an example of melting pot in America, at least on this coast, Riverside would be it, and always. And it's part of the growth of the Trujillo family in the beginning, and then of course John W. North. And thank you, Mrs. Alavi, for including his vision, which I believe needs to always be protected in this community. But I want to be sure that we look at Ms. Hill, the contributions in our community, and you bring this up, and I don't know if the legislation talked much about it, but of our Asian Americans. I mean, we are the place of the Rada House, which is successfully through the courts, got rid of redlining, and others, and of course the Native Americans, those that are here, and And as many of you know, I've been a strong advocate and volunteer at Sherman Indian High School. Last year, they're not there right now, but last year, 400 students, there was 80 different tribes there. And so what I'm leading to is, as it was when I took an ethnic studies course at La Sierra High School, and that's been a long time ago, but there was lab work, if you would. I'd like to see these young people that are taking this be more involved and interactive, not just the textbook, but how can it be applied in life? Even if we looked at adding, and I'd like to see it for a year, even if we added, and I know this Life 101, which we would help young people about how they move forward on careers and just finance and all that. But that would also have us look at how the white privilege has affects those markets and how that looks. When I took the study in at La Sierra High School, we all had to bring in a different speaker from different aspects. I don't remember quite now how I made the connection, but I had a Black Panther come, a gentleman from the Black Panther Party, and he really expressed, and it was very eye-opening. Even today, some of my colleagues, my classmates will bring that up. I would like to ask you a question, Assistant Superintendent Perez, on the ethnic studies, because I think there's some confusion. Former retired John W. North High School principal and one of our speakers tonight are calling in, derided the district for this isn't going to be enacted till 2028. I want to clarify, my reading is that you'll be working on this, you and your staff in the district will be working on this year, next year, and today's fifth grader, I believe, will be taking this course in their freshman year. Is that correct?
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Ms. Hill. I'm sorry. And so the 2028 is the graduation of those young people. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry that Mr. Kinnear was misinformed on that. So I'm very, those are my comments. I would like to see it expanded, but we have time. And I do want to ensure that we are involved with this very diverse community. And one of our congressmen, Mr. Takano, his own family was part of the internment of the Japanese Americans in World War II. We are a rich, diverse community, Casablanca and the East Side and all of that. And I'm very proud to be a citizen here, and I'm very proud, Mrs. Alavi, and I wish I could be here to vote on both of these subjects, both of these resolutions, and I don't need to have to encourage my colleagues without breaking the Brown Act. I know them all personally, President Alavi and Dr. Farouk and trustees Locke Dawson and Lee, and I wish I could make it 5-0, and I'll try to get back in here. But thank you, Mrs. Alavi, and thank you, Mrs. Hill and Ms. Hill and Dr. Perez for your work on this. And I do look forward to as well on the racism that we've got to work with our staff too. We've got to educate those that are part of our company, so to speak. And I know we have some concerns. Those have come up, and we need to address that. And as Mr. Green brought up tonight, those items are employee. But I hope to see that, and I'm sure you have that planned, and Dr. Hanson in particular. Thank you very much. I wish you a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Dr. Farouk?
Thank you, President Alvey. And before I begin, I just want to understand exactly, because there was a lot covered with the equity plan, the resolutions. What is it? Is it a combination of things that's right now up for consideration? Is it one specific thing? I just want to make sure I speak specifically to the issue at hand.
My understanding is this was a study session that involved both topics, and then we are going to take each one separately as an action. If you would like to wait to give your comments to when we discuss it as an action, you could do that, or you can discuss it now.
Okay, I see. Okay, maybe I'll just split it up a little bit then. I really want to commend the entire staff, and particularly Renee Hill, our Chief Academic Officer, with being very proactive on this effort. And I'll start with the ethnic studies area. That even before this resolution has come to the board for consideration, that Ms. Hill has been very proactive in organizing what kinds of key stakeholders need to be involved, and understanding again the implications of whether it's high school graduation requirement, expanded course offerings, the hiring process, all of those different things. I appreciate the proactive nature leadership that she's taken on that. And I think, again, that this is a great opportunity for our school district. Riverside is fortunate that our own assembly member and former teacher at RUSD, Jose Medina, is the author in Advancing the Ethnic Studies, which was referenced earlier by my colleague, Trustee Hunt, statewide consideration of a high school graduation requirement. And I think that this potential action by our board can be a tribute to that leadership, as that our community sharing those values, and as, again, being in that community. I think the public comments earlier, I think, speak to even a deeper issue, because I know that from an equity standpoint, and when you look at our community, our diversity of our school district, we have over 50 languages spoken in our district. Majority of our students are people of color. And so their stories and history of these wide-ranging cultures absolutely deserve to be shared to all of our students. And it's an opportunity, I think, to instill a deeper understanding of the contributions from all of our ancestors. That being said, I think what sometimes doesn't get brought up as much, one of the public comment gentlemen mentioned about that Stanford research, is that this is not just about that equity, and which is extraordinarily important, but this is also about student engagement and, more importantly, student achievement. When people have a connection and a pride, and you could hear that in some of the speakers just personally from their own experiences, it makes our students want to excel more and feel a deeper sense of inclusiveness and engagement within our academic community. And so I think that's a very underrated part of the value of ethnic studies. The National Education Association has also cited this research. So I think that's really important. I also just want to clarify a couple of things about what my understanding of what this resolution entails, and just so that we're clear on that. We would actually have integrated and enhanced ethnic studies content beginning as early as 2022. And as you can imagine, we're almost heading into 21 right now. That committee work that would be led by our Chief Academic Officer, Renee Hill, is very imperative, because these things cannot be done without thoughtfulness, planning, and valuable stakeholder input, so that we can successfully implement this as broadly and successfully as possible. And again, that the high school graduation requirement would take into effect in 24. And this would be 2 years, my understanding, before, if AB 331 is signed into law by Governor Newsom before the end of the month, that Assemblymember Jose Medina legislated. So this would be an opportunity for us to showcase that leadership. I think it's just important that I just want to make sure all of those things were taken into consideration. I'll hold off on my other comments when we consider the other specific resolution on racism as a public health crisis.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lee.
Thank you, President Alavi. Appreciate that. I want to thank Ms. Hill and Dr. Perez and just the whole team for working on these two issues and in a relatively short amount of time. I know a lot of foundational work has been done in regards to equity over the last several years, but to really kind of put this together into a plan that is going to create two resolutions for the board to consider tonight, I think is really commendable. I'd also like to thank Dr. Hansen for being our board, and for not only hiring really talented leaders to take on this work, but leaders who represent diverse perspectives and experiences. As a white male, I cannot begin to imagine or sympathize. I can empathize, that's for sure, with what some of our students of color or employees of color, or even our females have to go through. We heard our student board member talk about sexual harassment. I know that males can be sexually harassed too, but predominantly I know it's been a female issue. So whether it's regarding sex, gender, sexual orientation, religion, race, I think we have a really talented team that not only has shown leadership on this, but has shown a passion for it. So I want to thank everybody for the work. Also wanted to just again also thank the equity team, because we mentioned what that equity definition was, and that's not something that was just come up with by the board or by staff, but that was come up by the community, and worked on over a course of a number of meetings with a lot of different people. And so with that kind of as that foundation for us to build from, I think that's important to remember, and thank that team for their continued work on the stuff they've done in the past and the stuff they're going to continue to do forward. I do have a few questions. One is, it's kind of been answered, but just want a little bit more clarity on that timeline. I know that the legislation has a timeline for which ethnic studies needs to be a graduation requirement in California, and we've pushed that timeline up. But can you talk a little bit about, and it showed on the timeline, a little bit about why it will be today's 5th grade class that will be the first to be graduating with this as a requirement? So why it's going to take that number of years to make sure that we have a robust and a robust curriculum and the right materials for this endeavor.
Yes, Mr. Lee. First, I'd like to remind everyone that we have ethnic studies courses underway right now, and we do have some efforts to integrate ethnic studies content and other subjects. The ethnic studies courses were updated and revised last year, so they're freshly revised. We already had on the books also a materials adoption for this current year, but the team wants to make sure now that we have a specific eye toward reviewing those materials with this ethnic studies resolution in mind. And the resolution does include specifically names Asian people, Native people, and Indigenous people, and other populations as they relate to the United States Nation Building Project. So Mr. Lee, more specifically, it'll take some doing to get the materials reviewed in the way that we want them reviewed. The team wanted enough time to look at them all and have teachers pilot them. Also to get them in, and the team wanted to make sure that teachers had the proper professional learning experiences to be able to offer the courses in a robust manner. So the adoption is to conclude by and have the materials available before the fall of 22. So that would give us a couple of rounds trying out the courses before they're become an actual graduation requirement for students.
Thank you. Yeah, and really not including this school year, we're really looking at 3 school years before the first class will enter high school with that requirement.
Yes.
So really, it's really not that much time.
Right.
And then yes, in reference to the ethnic diversity classes that are offered now that have, just kind of been recreated and offered this year, what is the difference, if there is, between an ethnic diversity course and ethnic studies?
It's similar. It's just ethnic studies. We chose ethnic studies is the discipline, ethnic diversity is the class. So it's like saying mathematics compared to calculus. So ethnic diversity is calculus, ethnic studies is mathematics.
So it's possible that the current ethnic diversity course could be one of the courses that students take to satisfy their ethnic studies requirement.
Yes, that is a distinct possibility.
Okay. Also want to thank the team that came together quickly for the teachers that are putting together or looking at the curriculum and kind of looking at that timeline and the vision for this ethnic studies requirement for coming together quickly. And I do hope that once they kind of have a rough plan, that they do consult the community and get some input from them to see if any revisions need to be taken place. And I do like the idea that they're going to go back and stay engaged with community throughout that process. I think that's great. Also wanted to mention that I do like the fact that we're not looking at this just as a checkbox for the legislation that we're thankful that our assemblymen put together and pushed forward that was passed by a big margin, but that we're looking at it from a whole TK-12 perspective. I think that's really, really important because starting in high school obviously is too late. I know we don't do that now, but I think just making a bigger focus on trying to create more anti-racist curriculum for our students and for our teachers, that it just becomes second nature, so that this learned behavior of racism is less learned and countered by something that we want to see in all of our students and our staff. And then I had one more question in regards to and I saw that was on the ethnic studies team's list about making some of these courses an A rather than a G. So I just want to know how far, if it's just, that's just the discussion we've had so far. I know this is something that I brought up in the past in regards to African American studies and Chicano studies to make them A courses. So what do we think the timeline is on that? And how quickly do you think we can get those approved as A courses?
The team tells me, Mr. Lee, that it depends on how we fulfill the graduation requirement. If the course to be offered, or one of the courses to be offered, is ethnic studies combined with another semester, those courses have been written. So it would just be a matter of revising them to be history, not elective. If that ethnic studies course is to be a full year, or excuse me, ethnic diversity class is to be a full year, it would take some more work to revise it and then find the appropriate material for a year-long worth of time, because the work last year was for a semester course.
Okay. Yeah, if possible, I really would like to see some of those existing courses be approved as an A without waiting until the 24, 25, or 27, 28 school year. Because I do think that gives people that are not going to have that as a requirement another option, that they don't have to take an elective. They can take these courses without foregoing maybe a band or an arts class and not making students pick. But with that, I'll turn over my time again, just thanks to the team for these efforts. And I look forward to voting on these resolutions when it comes to the action calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I'm now going to call on Mrs. Lock-Dawson.
Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. My colleagues asked a lot of the same questions that I had, so I just want to quickly just talk about the timing of this. And if it's one thing I feel very strongly about, is that we need to have whatever we do as a board, as a district, the things we roll out, the things we put in place have to be meaningful, and they have to result in meaningful change. And sometimes it takes a little bit, it takes a while, and it takes longer than we might want it to be. But, we didn't arrive at these problems overnight. So I think we need to make sure we give good thought, and we need to work with our community on making something that is meaningful and makes a difference. I think it's really just a comment. I just wanted to thank Dr. Perez and her team and Ms. Hill. This has been a long time coming, and for those of us who have been on the board and watched things happen over the years, it's really encouraging to see some of these things actually coming to fruition. I really like the fact that our equity work and our equity plan has a part in there on coming up with an actionable plan with goals. And that was something I recommended a few years ago with the UCR, had a summer program that they had where people would come and they'd learn, teachers would come, it was an institute for teachers, and they would come to learn about a lot of these things, but as part of their participation, they would have to have an action plan when they went back to their sites. And I love that idea, right? But it can't be just on one person. It's got to be district-wide, and that's what we're doing right now. So I really, really appreciate that. And I just want to thank everybody. It's a long time coming, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lock-Dawson. Dr. Farouk, you had another comment?
Sure, and Trustee Lee addressed a lot of that through his questions. But I'm glad that we made the mention also that in the resolution language there is the references about the Asian American, Native American, Indigenous, and other cultures. The one last thing I'll just say that I didn't hear covered is that there's also a practical value beyond everything else we've discussed, that if the governor does sign this and AB 331 and it becomes required by all school districts, I think there's already a teacher shortage as it is in California and nationally. And I think when it comes to the courses, specifically ethnic studies related, I think there's going to be even a bigger shortage. And I think the sooner that the fact that if our district is fully committed to this and making this required for all of our students, then we can really be even a deeper level of engagement and outreach to ensuring that we recruit the best talent possible before there's a huge run on the top talented pool of teachers that are available to teach this, and especially when we take into account the value of having the diversity of the instructors themselves as well. So I just wanted to emphasize that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've covered the study session, and now I'm going to move to the action calendar. And I'm going to begin by asking Ms. Rena Frosto for any public comments regarding G1, which is our resolution, Racism as a Public Health Crisis.
Mrs. Alavi, there were no comments for item G1. So the queue is open for item G2, which is the approval of resolution number 2020-2140 Ethnic Studies Programs in RUSD.
Thank you very much. And so now we will take this as an action item, and we will open it up for any motions that anyone had. I will say, just in terms of my comment, is people in the public may not know a lot of the background work that goes into this, but we've been working on this very hard for the last month. And I think what we have here is a very good resolution, which basically outlines what the district is going to do for equity and is a very serious document. I hope everyone gets a chance to read it, but I'm very proud of it. So now I will ask the board if there's further comments or a motion.
Salavi?
Yes, Mr. Hunt.
I was able, thank goodness the Fontana Planning Commission has a lot of public comments. I would move to move forward resolution 2020. I'm sorry, I can't quite. I move forward this resolution on the racism as a public health crisis.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second, I thought we were voting on ethnic studies. It doesn't matter.
I think
Ethnic studies is G2. It's the next one.
Okay, I second his motion.
I'm sorry.
Jeff, would you change the slide to, thank you.
Thank you. That was our.
I'm just taking it in order of the agenda. Okay, is there any further comment on our resolution on racism as a public health crisis?
Just a quick comment.
Yes, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. I just wanted to make it known, I am going to support this resolution. I just think it's important, as with any resolution that we make, that obviously it's a priority of the board and we think it's good policy when we make these resolutions, but then also that we follow through with providing funding to ensure that the goal of the resolution is accomplished. So I think without that, then the resolution is just another piece of paper to sit in the desk. And I know we've allocated quite a bit of funds towards equity and some funds towards some anti-racist curriculum, and also obviously to the mental health of our students. But I just would like staff, and I'm sure the board would agree, and we'll comment on it in future LCAP budgets, but that we are aligning our budget with some of these resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Ms. Lock-Dawson?
Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. I just want to thank the board for its input on this. This was something Mrs. Alavi and I worked on our subcommittee, and we put out, and there was a question on what the title should be, on whether it should be something as an education crisis, as a public health crisis, what we called it. Regardless of what the title is, I want people to have a close look at the language of it. This is a really difficult time in our nation's history right now, and it's really important that we embrace it, because I truly believe that we cannot grow as a country, we cannot grow as public educational institutions without acknowledging that there are issues. It would be to our peril to ignore them. So I really encourage people, if they haven't read it, to go beyond the title and look to the meat of this resolution, because I think there is some really, really valuable information in there about things that our district is doing and will do, and what we acknowledge is and our issues. So thank you, Mrs. Alavi, and thank you for your input on that.
Thank you. Dr. Farouk?
Thank you. Thank you, President Albi. So I wanted to speak a few points about this. I think one thing that's very important about this resolution is that the public health crisis, the immediacy of what we're dealing with COVID-19 and the pandemic, and the disproportionate impact that it's having on people of color on a wide spectrum of things, not only applies to some of the principles of what's in this resolution, but I really hope that this is top of mind for us on how we approach the safety and access to precautionary efforts for the safety of our employees. And from a distance learning standpoint, our students we've put a lot of emphasis as a district that I'm very proud of on social emotional well-being for, again, not just for our students, but our employees and even external resources to our families. I think all of that is very, very important and prudent. And I think us examining the way that we appropriate these resources and the priorities that we place within a lens of institutional racism and biases is extraordinarily important. And so I think this is a very relevant issue. I don't think this is something that's symbolic or academic. I think this is something that requires meaningful action. And I echo the comments of my colleague, Trustee Lee, about how we look at putting resources towards that effort. I just want to speak to two other points, just because I wasn't sure where else to cover them. That one regarding the equity plan references that were made earlier. I know it's not an action item, so I'll just speak to it now. I really want to commend Dr. Perez on that. I think the fact that we're again focusing on measurable, tangible actions is obviously the only way we can make a meaningful difference for our community and our district. The one thing that I will just say as feedback is that I hope we challenge ourselves on what targeted metrics that, or whether it's at the school site level or the district level, that we propose for different issues, even if it means that we risk falling short because they're bolder goals. I think that this should hopefully be a sense of an urgent call to action, and it will hopefully compel us to excel with greater progress than we thought might have been possible. So I hope that kind of spirit is there when we go about defining those metrics and measurable outcomes. The last thing I'll just say is I think that, I'm very proud that of our district in terms of the comprehensive way. Dr. Perez's presentation outlined a lot of it, but I think what's important to mention is that a lot of these efforts, whether it was restorative justice, the unconscious bias training, or workforce diversity hiring, these efforts have been in motion prior to these efforts. These are the ways to codify them and make them even more specific with tangible goals. But these efforts have been going. And I think it's really important that we make a concerted effort to create a higher degree of awareness of these efforts, and that way we get more buy-in from the community and more support in ensuring that there's accountability and that these efforts are successfully implemented. Because at the end of the day, obviously, that's all we're ultimately concerned with. And I hope that the process of doing that can help foster more constructive ideas on how we can improve even beyond the wide spectrum of areas on how we're addressing this, or we can serve as a best practice to other districts as well. So I just wanted to share those thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Farouk. And if the public would indulge me, I think it might be beneficial for us to actually read the resolution. And so I'll call on Dr. Perez, if she would be willing to read the resolution as it stands, and so that the public can hear the words that we're going to stand behind, and as Mr. Lee said, support financially as well. Dr. Perez?
Thank you. I'm happy to do so. So, a resolution on racism as a public health crisis. Whereas our nation, though founded on the principles that all people are created equal, has foundered and withheld that promise from a vast number of people of color, creating negative consequences for our community that impact our school system. And whereas our children continue to live in an environment where they witness systemic racism throughout our society and must negotiate a world that continues to present roadblocks to people of color. And whereas our students of color continue to experience microaggressions, racial profiling, hate incidences, and racial bias that harm them emotionally and academically. And whereas we are guided by our definition of equity, equity is accomplished when access is based on need and every student is provided with what they individually require to learn and succeed to fulfill their academic and social advancement. And whereas we are committed to eliminating disparities and inequitable practices, implementing inclusive practices, honoring individuality with a focus on high outcomes for all, and guaranteeing respectful treatment where all individuals feel valued. And whereas our district is committed to proactively identify class and cultural biases, as well as practices, policies, and institutional barriers that may negatively influence student learning and perpetuate achievement gaps. And whereas it is essential to teach the experiences, honor the history, and highlight the contributions of people of color through ethnic studies, while ensuring that every person of color has the social, economic, and political power to thrive. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has taken a disproportionate physical, mental, and financial toll on communities of color and caused a normalization of anti-Asian xenophobia. And whereas community members of color continue to experience microaggressions, racial profiling, hate incidences, and racial bias in all systems and institutions that they encounter. And whereas discrimination, bias, and racist incidents against students of color may harm them mentally, physically, and academically. And whereas we believe silence and inaction by individuals and institutions perpetuate injustice, bias, and racism. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Riverside Unified School District Board of Education stand firmly against bigotry, prejudice, discrimination, and inequity in all forms, both institutional and individual. 1, the Riverside Unified School District denounces discrimination, racism, and sentiments against Black people. We will not tolerate racist treatment of any members of our community, and we will speak out against racism and systemic oppression in our society to help stop the spread of bigotry. The Riverside Unified School District joins cities, counties, and states across the country in affirming its commitment to the safety and well-being of our communities of color and in combating hate crimes and biases in our government system. The Riverside Unified School District will implement its Equity and Community Engagement Action Plan to increase its efforts to provide a safe and welcoming school environment for all students, working with the City of Riverside's community nonprofits and other government agencies. 4, the Riverside Unified School District will confront biases in our own school district and actively engage in the challenging work of dismantling practices that may limit opportunities for our students of color. The Riverside Unified School District Board of Education shall make decisions with a deliberate awareness of systemic barriers to learning faced by students of color and or diverse cultural, linguistic, neurological, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic backgrounds. This responsibility rests with us as an organization and educational institution. 6, the Riverside Unified School District recognizes that health is inextricably linked to student achievement, and families of color have disproportionately less access to mental health services. We will continue providing social, emotional, and mental health support to students and families through our wellness services, student assistance program, counselors, educationally related mental health services, trauma-informed practices, and behavioral supports to combat the impacts of racism and bias that students may experience. 7, the Riverside Unified School District will continue its initiatives to recruit and retain teachers of color in order to provide all students with the example of diverse mentorship. Be it further resolved that the Riverside Unified School District is committed to providing safe spaces for discussions on race and injustice, including the collaboration with city and community members. And be it further resolved that the Riverside Unified School District is committed to restorative justice practices, implicit bias training, ethnic studies, and resources that foster dialogue around the guiding principles of inclusivity and grow cross-racial solidarity as the fabric of the educational system. Finally, be it resolved that Riverside Unified School District will work tirelessly and collaboratively with staff, students, and families to continue to dismantle institutionalized racism in our society and ensure that all initiatives and policies are actively implemented. The board shall make decisions with a deliberate awareness of systemic barriers to learning faced by students of color and or diverse cultural, linguistic, neurological, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic background. This responsibility rests with us as an organization and educational institution.
Thank you very much, Dr. Perez. We have a motion for approval and a second. And hearing no further comment, I'm going to ask for roll call vote. I'm going to start with Ms. Orozco.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Farouk,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Hunt,
Yes.
Mrs. Lock-Dawson.
Yes.
I say yes, and that is unanimous. So we have now passed our resolution on racism as a public health crisis. Thank you, everybody who worked on this. It's it was some hard work and definitely worthwhile. So yes.
May I ask one thing, Mrs. Alavi, President Alavi?
Yes, Mr.
Thank you so much for your allowance. To go back to Mrs. Lock-Dawson's suggestion and urging of everyone to read this, I believe it's incumbent on us as the district to make sure we disseminate this in every possible way, to send it to our parents, but we serve a greater community than just our parents. So in the newspaper, whatever we need to do to for one, to let them know we've done this and our strong stance, and so wonderful that it's done. John W. North, I think, would be proud. But I think that, Mrs. Lock-Dawson observed we're in a unique time and high volatility on race issues here in America. So many misuse the platform. And so I want to be sure that everyone understands, and maybe this, as you talked about, President Alavi, understands this resolution and doesn't try to, it isn't misused, to put it that way, with all confidence in my community. But it's happened in other areas with this type of resolution, and I want to be sure they understand the commitment to the truth that the district has. But thank you so much for that. And I'll run back and I'll be back.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. I appreciate that. Now we will go on to item G2, which is a resolution about ethnic studies programs in Riverside Unified School District. And I will ask Mrs. Frosto, has she received any comments?
Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. We did not receive any comments for item G2, so we will open the queue for item G3. If you are a member of the public who has joined the Zoom call today to provide comment on the agenda item G3, approval of the 2020-21 Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, you may now enter the queue by using the raised hand function if you are logged in using the computer, or *9 if you are using your phone to call in. Once again, the queue is only open for item G3, approval of the 2020-21 Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so now I call upon the board. Oh, Dr. Farouk.
President Alavi, I'd like to make a motion to approve the ethnic studies as a high school graduation requirement resolution.
Thank you, Dr. Farouk. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lee. Any further discussion? I know we've been discussing it for the last hour, but any further discussion?
Just one quick comment. Just that as a parent of 3 elementary school kids, I'm really excited that, assuming that the board passes this resolution here in a moment, that my son Henry and his classmates will be the second graduating class with this requirement, and that Felix will be the third in his classmates, and that Amelia will be the 5th. So I'm proud of this district for doing this. I know, at least personally, I wasn't quite ready when this legislation was up last year, didn't quite have the right information. But as I mentioned at a previous meeting, I don't think the timing is more urgent for something like this for our students and necessary. And I was wrong last year. We should have done it sooner. So, but I'm glad that we're doing it now, and that the kids moving forward that have chosen not to take an ethnic studies class in high school for whatever reason will be more encouraged to moving forward.
Thank you. And I think perhaps to be fair to both resolutions, Ms. Hill, would you like to read the resolution on ethnic studies for us?
I'd be happy to, Mrs. Alavi. Thank you. Riverside Unified School District Board of Education, Resolution 2020-2140, in support of an ethnic studies program in Riverside Unified School District. Whereas Riverside Unified School District seeks to inspire and empower students to reach their highest potential in order to demonstrate the value of lifelong learning, personal integrity, achievement, and accomplishment. And whereas the Riverside Unified student body is culturally, ethnically, and linguistically diverse, with a population that is 65.1% Hispanic, 20.7% white, 6.9% African American, 3.9% Asian, 3% two or more races or other, and 1.3% Filipino. The 54 languages spoken in the district include Arabic, English, Filipino, Korean, Mandarin, Punjabi, Anjabal, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Whereas the district affirms its stated value of implementing inclusive practices and policies that honor the rich diversity of our district and the greater region. Also affirming that the district works diligently to ensure all students have their needs met, strengths fostered, and graduate prepared for success with a focus on positive outcomes for all. And whereas the district definition states that equity is accomplished when access is based on need and every student is provided with what they individually require to learn and succeed to fulfill their academic and social advancement. And whereas the role of ethnic studies is to change the curriculum to promote critical thinking regarding the intersection between systems, social and ethnic minority status, so that the material is substantially inclusive of all students and the achievements, experiences, and perspectives of the individuals and people, especially people of color, who are not often represented in the TK-12 education. And whereas it is essential to include the experiences, teach the history, highlight the contributions of people of color throughout ethnic studies, while ensuring that every person of color has the social, economic, and political power to thrive. And whereas in 2011, the National Education Association published the academic and social value of ethnic studies, which reported ethnic studies has a positive impact on students of color. And whereas the 2016 study by Stanford University found that taking an ethnic studies course led to better grades, especially in math and science, and also increased attendance among high school students at risk of dropping out. And whereas we are guided by the definition of ethnic studies as the interdisciplinary social and historical study of how different populations have experienced, survived, and critically engaged the United States nation building project. And whereas the district has a long-standing tradition of offering courses in African American studies, Chicano studies, and ethnic diversity. And now therefore be it resolved that an anti-racist, robust, interdisciplinary, vertically aligned ethnic studies program that integrates content into all practicable subjects and includes high school courses in the academic discipline of ethnic studies be financially and structurally pursued. This program shall include curriculum, assessment, and materials for both elementary and secondary students, professional learning for educators and education leaders, use of integrated content beginning in the 2022-23 school year or earlier, additional perspectives, including but not limited to Asian American, Native American, Indigenous, and other perspectives, and a graduation requirement for the completion of an ethnic studies course beginning in the 2024-25 school year for the graduating class of 2027-28. Be it further resolved that the Riverside Unified District Board of Education directs the superintendent to continue and strengthen current offerings in ethnic studies and the inclusion of multicultural perspectives, authors, contributors, and protagonists throughout the existing TK-12 education program. Establish an ethnic studies advisory committee comprised of TK-12 educators, college level professors, parents, students, and community members. Establish a teacher work group or set of work groups to create, review, strengthen, and augment course outlines, curriculum, and assessments. Conclude a secondary instructional materials adoption for resources on or before June 2022. Analyze the impact of the graduation requirement and propose a timeline for elementary materials adoption. Thank you, Mrs. Alavi.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. That was great. And now that we have a motion and a second, is there any further comment? Okay, I'm going to be taking a roll call vote. Ms. Orozco.
Yes.
Dr. Farouk.
Yes.
Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Hunt.
He's
He had to step out to that meeting.
No, he's there.
no,
He's
no,
there.
he's here. He's here.
You call him?
Mr. Hunt.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Lockdawson.
Yes.
And I say yes, so that is unanimous. Thank you, one and all. That was good work on the part of everyone. And now we will move on to our last final action item, item G3, and I'll ask Ms. Frosto if there has been any public comment.
Mrs. Alavi, there are no public comments for item G3, so we will now open the queue for reports discussion, item H1. If you are a member of the public who has joined the Zoom call today to provide comment on the agenda item H1, a presentation including reports from students, parents, and teachers on the opening of the new school year, you may now enter the queue by using the raised hand function if you are logged in using the computer, or *9 if you are using your phone to call in. Once again, the queue is open for item H1, a presentation including reports from students, parents, and teachers on the opening of the new school year. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll remind the board as well as the public that this is we are going to be taking an action for approval on the learning continuity and attendance plan, or the LCAP plan for 2021, which we heard at the last meeting. We went into some detail about it, and we are now taking action on it. And I will entertain any motion or discussion on that item.
Make a motion to approve the LCAP plan, and if there's no further comment.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Lockdawson? Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Perez, is there anything you wanted to add to our to this, since we did spend some time with it at the last meeting?
No, I would just like to point out that there were a few additions that were added to the plan itself, and it was just to incorporate the 1920 LCAP actions and services that were appropriate to each section, and that was the only modification to the plan.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions on that? Okay, there has been a motion and a second. I'll do a roll call. Ms. Orozco?
Yes.
Dr. Farouk?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Hunt?
Mr. Hunt had to step away, President Alavi.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Lockdawson?
Yes.
And I say yes. So thank you very much. Good work on Dr. Perez and her team. Of all the people that have worked on the LCAP plan, it was particularly difficult this year with all the modifications we've had to make with the COVID-19. So thank you for your hard work on that. Ms. Frosto, do you think we've had enough time to hear if anybody wants to speak to our next item?
I believe so, Mrs. Alavi. There are no public comments.
Thank you. Okay, we will now go to our final report. I believe we're going to hear from some members of our district. Ms. Hill.
Yes, Mrs. Alamy, tonight we have a presentation. The board has asked for input and feedback from parents, teachers, and students periodically. So we were able to gather some 1-minute videos to give you a little bit of perspective from the field. And then we have a sequence plan for collecting some survey data that I'll share with you after the videos.
Terrific. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Corey, and I'm a senior in Health Careers Academy. As a seat-based student, I'm really grateful for the support of our Ramona High School teachers, and I've gained knowledge about things such as college applications, scholarships, and job applications, which are all vital to my future. On the other hand, our HCA members that are now virtual students have no connection with us, and it's hard to keep them accountable for their grades, for their assignments, and just about their personal lives. So I really miss that close-knit bond that an academy like us strives on.
Hi, my name is Azizi Soule, and I'm the parent of Alon Soule. He is a senior at Martin Luther King High School, and we chose the in-person program. A pro about the in-person program right now is the anticipation of going back to school so he can be with his peers and play basketball. A con is for him are the 2-hour classes. They're a little bit long, especially when the teacher takes the entire 2 hours to lecture. And also time management of all the course loads of all the classes, making sure he turns in all of his assignments on time. But he does like the independent time that he can, the independent hour that he can work on homework as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Francis, and I teach 6th grade at Madison Elementary, and it's my 17th year teaching at Madison. Distance learning has brought both challenges and opportunities for growth this year. Fortunately, I'm able to teach with a colleague, and so we can plan together and work our best to build content and to meet the needs of our students, and we're also able to collaborate with other teachers at our sites. That has made a big difference in being able to help lessen the feeling of isolation that comes with distance learning. The hardest part of distance learning for me has been that distance, that physical distance from my students and not being able to be in the same room with them and feel their energy. But we're working together to bridge that distance. We're sharing our experiences and trying to find connections and ways to learn and grow together. Some days the Wi-Fi doesn't work, sometimes websites don't load, and some days, honestly, we're very overwhelmed. But ultimately, I'm living for those moments where I see and I hear students making connections and learning and growing. And it may be difficult, but my class and I are still working hard and making growth and doing our best. And I know ultimately we're going to persevere.
A mí me gusta este año escolar porque es virtual. Y a mí me gusta que es virtual, es que podemos hacer chats y podemos hacer el arte. A mí me gusta de los chats es que no hablamos en el otro compañeros oído cuando la o el maestro o maestra está enseñando. También me gusta el arte porque es divertido y podemos hacerlo cuando él o la maestra o maestro está enseñando.
What I like about this school year is that it's virtual. And what I like about that it's virtual is that we can do chats and art. What I like about chats is that we don't have to whisper into somebody's ear when the teacher is teaching. And also, what I like about art is that we could do it at the same time as he or she is teaching.
Hi, I'm Danny Harmon. I'm the parent of Devin Harmon. Her teacher is Miss Barboza. I am also a parent volunteer here at Beatty Elementary. I'm with the PTA. I am with fundraising with the PTA. I am also a member of the school side council. I'm also a parent volunteer. I've received Volunteer of the Year 2 years in a row. The highlights of Beatty, I like Patricia Beatty because the school is very diverse. I also live in the community, and so I'm very familiar with the parents. The staff here is like a family, so I pretty much like Patricia Beatty. The only challenges here at the school will probably be like we just need more African American participation, and there's a language barrier with the parents. That's probably why it's making it hard for me to find other volunteers because of the language barrier. But other than that, everything else about the school is perfect. All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Lori Williams, and I am an 8th grade ELA teacher at Miller Middle School, currently on loan to the virtual school. I also have 3 children at RUSD, 2 at Miller, and 1 at King High School. And the highlights I've experienced as a teacher have been it just has challenged me to be a better teacher, to think outside of the box. I like that I'm able to differentiate in a way that I never could, and I can pull small groups, and really it's enabled me to use technology that identifies where my students are struggling and where they need to have intervention or them to be enriched. As a mom, one of my favorite highlights is having a peek into their classrooms. So instead of asking, how was your day at the end of the day, I get to ask questions like, well, what did you think in that discussion at history about world religions? Some of the challenges I think that I've faced as a teacher are my students who just don't have the proper technology and Wi-Fi. It's really heartbreaking to see them trying their best with such limited resources. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jillian McCombs. I'm a senior at Riverside Virtual School under the home-based program. A little about me is that I love to paint and do anything artistic. One of my paintings is actually right here behind me. I am super excited to graduate early this year, and that's all thanks to the home-based program. I love the self-based nature of the program, all on Odysseyware, and the fact that I can make my own school hours and have the most productive days that fit around myself and my schedule is just really, really nice. The biggest adjustment, and I guess difficulty, was just changing from going to school every day and then not going to school every day and being at home. But honestly, just a big thank you to my AT, Miss McAllister, because she's really helped to make that adjustment so much easier. And I'm really enjoying this school year. So thank you so much, RUSD staff, for working so diligently to just make this school year the best for everyone that it can be. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Karina Bondrostro, and I'm a 1st grade home-based teacher at Summit View. I would like to talk about my experience in this home-based program. So some of the successes that I have experienced with this program is being able to have a well-managed Google Classroom where parents can easily navigate, find the resources that they need. I've also found success with knowing the curriculum pretty well, knowing where to find resources, and being able to provide those resources for parents to supplement their lessons or extend their lessons if needed. And also I've found that I have made myself readily available for parents as needed for any questions that they have. I'm willing to jump on the phone with them or Google Meets to better assist them, and that has helped them be more successful. And some of the challenges that I have experienced has been with managing the caseload. It does become very overwhelming at times with having to meet with parents on a weekly basis, having to document everything and record. So that's been a little bit overwhelming, but we've been able to manage that now. Another challenge is that I found that parents need a lot more support in becoming the effective teachers that I know that they can be. So I find that parents need a little bit more training, a little bit more assistance in terms of what their role is for this program. And also I'm learning as I go, so I'm definitely, I'm grateful to have parents who are, willing to take that plunge with me and learning together. And definitely it's been a big learning curve to do this program digitally for myself and parents. But I feel like as the time goes, we're getting better, and we're making this a much more successful program. Thank you.
So, Mrs. Elavy, it was we had many submissions for these videos. So I do want to thank principals who got volunteers to submit, and also to Jeff Roy, Brandy Wagon, and team who made those videos come together so smoothly and nicely. They don't arrive to us that way. We can and will continue the video series in some other meetings for feedback.
Thank you.
Which
There's a comment from Mrs. Lockdawson.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to thank all the parents, the students, and the teachers who participated in that video. It's very illustrative, let me say, about the opening of the school year. I participated in a meeting this past week with a number of our members of the community. And one of the things that came up was somebody who said to me, she was a teacher, do you know what's going on out there? What's your perception of what's happening? And I said, well, it's uneven at best. Some of it has gone really well for some, and some it has been a very bumpy ride, both parents and teachers and parents. So I was glad to hear in this video that we didn't hear just the glossing over and how fabulous it all is, because that's not the message I've been getting from the parents who've been contacting me and the teachers who've been contacting me. It's rough. It is rough. But it's important for the board to hear this. It's important for the community to hear this, that we are trying to meet these challenges and address them. And so I really appreciate you bringing this video to us so we could see at least a snippet, a little bit more about what's happening, and having it in the different grade levels, I thought, or the different program areas is really good. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Hill, continue.
Yes, so if you can put up the last piece of the video there, we do have a plan. Dr. Lewis and his team have devised a plan for feedback, and we'll be working in concert with Dr. Roger Yoho, who has worked with us before. I have some dates missing, but to get some surveys crafted for students, parents, and employees, give you, the board, an opportunity to review those, then get a social media campaign underway. We've been mentioning in some of our communications that a survey opportunity will be coming up. They have to be translated, of course, and then the window would be open from September 18th through 25th. It'll be going to students, families, and employees, like I said, plus our bargaining units, and the results will be shared mid-October.
And Ms. Hill, that's an anonymous survey, correct?
Yes, it is.
Very good. I think that's great. I'll be looking forward to getting that back from everyone and getting some really unvarnished truth. So that's good. Any further comments by anyone on the board?
Mrs. Alavi, may I make a comment?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I want to thank staff for such a wonderful board meeting and all those students and parents and staff members that did the videos. And I just need to say I started this week visiting virtual classrooms. I've been to 10 so far, and it has been a highlight, and I've learned a lot, and I've seen some of the struggles. And so I have asked our board secretary, Beth Martin, to reach out to all the members of the board, and you have an opportunity to sign up and join me, or our chief academic officer, Renee Hill, as we go out and do our normal classroom visits and visit every school. So please look at your calendars, work closely with Miss Martin, and we invite you to come and join us. It's been absolutely yesterday and today. Those school visits have been the highlight of my day, and I'd like to have you come and join me. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to that. Any further comment? Okay, thank you. We've come to the conclusion of our meeting, and we are now at the agenda items for future meetings. Is there anyone who has an agenda item for a future meeting? Okay, then I will adjourn tonight in the memory of Vicki Buchanan, who worked for many, many years as an office assistant at Harrison Elementary School. And we will now be adjourned. Thank you, one and all. Mm-hmm.